Welcome to this episode of The Martial Truth, the deadliest martial art. Before we get started with that, a couple of things. I want to thank you all. We're closing in on 12,000 subscribers for our little martial arts channel here. We have well over 1,000 videos up now. We're adding videos all the time. Please click that like, share and subscribe to videos if you like them. It helps a lot. And also consider becoming a member. It's $2.99 a month. There'll be primarily instructional videos there. You'll get this earlier than everybody else, and all the member videos are commercial free. All right, so just think about it. Appreciate it if you do that. So let's talk about the deadliest art. I started back in 1979, which basically means I'm old. Okay, and I started training, and when I started training, obviously the Bruce Lee movies were out, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, Kung Fu is the deadliest thing there is," and everybody wanted to study Kung Fu, right? And this was the big thing for several years. And I remember a friend of mine who was a karate sensei told me a few years ago. He went to apply for a job at Jerome Mackey's. Jerome Mackey was a chain of martial arts schools back in New York in the late 60s, early 70s. Let's just say Jerome Mackey eventually went to prison for doing some things he shouldn't be doing. Sure, you can Google it, okay? And when he went in, he applied to be a karate instructor, and Jerome Mackey said to him, "Do you know Kung Fu?" And he said no, and he handed him a book and said, "Go home, teach yourself these techniques. You're starting to teach the Kung Fu class 2 nights from now." So I just use that as an example sometimes of some of the funny stuff that goes on in martial arts. But, again, everybody began to think, well, Kung Fu must be the deadliest art. They're watching Bruce Lee and these other crazy Chinese martial arts movies, which, again, I love to this day. I love watching them, right? I know, though, that you're not reaching into someone's body and pulling out their still beating heart and all the, crazy over-the-top stuff we saw in these Bruce Lee movies, and all these Kung Fu movies, all right? So, again, people started to get this idea, oh, Kung Fu's the deadliest art. Then the ninjutsu craze hit. Oh boy, this was a good one. Okay, the ninjutsu craze hits. Everybody wants to learn ninjutsu. There's a particular guy goes to Japan, studies with Hatsumi Sensei, and now he comes back. He's a certified ninja. Ninja is the deadliest art because they can disappear at will, and they learn all these deadly things. And they have the assassins of Japan, right? Little is known about real ninja in Japan. Okay, I hate to burst everybody's bubble, but it's more a fantasy than the reality. Did they exist? Yeah, they're spies, like anything else. Okay, we have them here in this country. Every country has them. All right, but I once was asked by a couple of martial artists, "What do you think of ninjutsu?" And I said, well, let me ask you a question. If ninjas were real in current day and they were these deadly guys that could do all these different things, do you think they'd be wearing these black masks and these black pajamas, or do you think they'd be wearing business suits and carrying briefcases and engaging in things like spying for their country and corporate espionage? And they both looked at each other and they turned back to me, and one of them said, "You've got a point." So again, though, boy, this wave went for quite a while. Boy, I wanted to be a ninja. Who didn't want to be a ninja? This romantic idea of this climbing walls and, doing all these different amazing things. And then, of course, movies start coming out and you're like, oh my God, right? Even cooler, right? But again, what's so deadly about it? I mean, it's a martial art. What's so deadly about Kung Fu? It's a martial art. There's lots of martial arts, all right? Well, karate is the most deadliest art. And this art. Judo's the most deadliest art. I had a judo teacher once tell me, judo's the deadliest art because you throw someone and you drive them straight on their head, and there's nothing deadlier than that. You know, I was an 18-year-old brown belt in karate studying judo in college for, you know, as part of a judo club. And at 18, when that person made that statement, I thought it was one of the most ridiculous things I'd ever heard. This is as an 18-year-old, okay? Yeah, of course judo can be deadly. They all can be deadly, all right? You know, then we have, you know, the Filipino martial arts craze. That went on for a while. Again, of course it's deadly. You're using weapons. Believe me, the fastest way to kill somebody is with a weapon, all right? It's much easier to take somebody out with a weapon than it is with your hands. That's a fact, all right? Every culture, every society throughout history has known that fact, that it's easier. The easiest way to take a guy out quickly is use a weapon, all right? So for a while, Eskrima real popular, you know. And I remember a couple of times reading a couple of articles here and there where some guy who was studying stick fighting here decided that he would go to the Philippines and he would look to train with people there and maybe, you know. And you know, I remember at least one guy being killed there in a stick fighting match with just some guy on the street who just happened to study those arts. Because again, you know, he's thinking it's going to be like him training here in the USA. But in the Philippines at that time, and I'm sure plenty of places, the Philippines to this day, this is a vital part of their life, protection arts. And they're deadly serious at it, okay? And, you know, so again, one of the things we need to understand is some places still have a very, very serious need for serious self-defense, life-saving arts. Not tournament, not scoring points, but I have to be able to actually defend myself. I remember Sherman Harrell, one of my Ishinru sensei, telling me that he went to do seminars in South Africa. And he noticed a bunch of the people had pretty serious scars on their forearm. When he asked the instructor who owned the school, he said, oh, those are from hatchets. And he said they got those, you know, on their way home from the school. They were attacked by gangs who were armed with hatchets. And Sherman Harrell told me he never saw people train in karate harder than those guys. Your life's on the line, things change. You know, then we roll into the 80s, the late 80s and early 90s, and we start seeing the rise of the UFC, and in particular, in the beginning, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. Royce Gracie is defeating everyone in the UFC, although I heard there was possibly, you know, some maybe shenanigans involved with that in the beginning. But they claim it's undefeatable. So this is what they're saying. Oh, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, you can't defeat it. No one can defeat it. And they're marketing like that. Anytime you market anything as the best ever, it's the ultimate, normally you're destined for failure. Okay? So for a while it went on where they were doing phenomenal. And then 3 of the top Gracies in, I think, around a year's time were defeated by the same fighter from Japan. And his nickname was the Gracie Killer. And, you know, this sent shockwaves through the modern jiu-jitsu community. Oh my God, what do you mean? We thought Gracie Jiu-Jitsu couldn't be defeated. Okay? Everything can be defeated. There is no deadliest martial art. Anybody that thinks that one particular art is the deadliest art, all right, you're living in fantasy land, okay? This is just not the case, all right? There are deadly and dangerous people. Now, you can study an art and you could become a very deadly and dangerous person. But there's many other people that study that same art, and they don't become so dangerous, and they don't become so deadly. And really what makes an art deadly is the individual practitioner of that art that is able to take what he's learned in the training hall and then bring that into the reality of life and death combat. So when I was growing up, I remember seeing a movie called To Hell and Back. And it was the story of Audie Murphy. And Audie Murphy is the most decorated soldier in World War II. Audie Murphy was only about my size, 5'7", 5'8". He lied to get into the Army at a young age. He had to support his other siblings. So, he had a reason to get in the Army. And Audie Murphy rose and did things as a soldier that some would say, looking at it, would say are superhuman. I mean, he's personally responsible for the deaths of hundreds of Nazis, charged a machine gun nest by himself, was wounded several times. As soon as the wound was healed, went back, wanted to immediately go back to his unit and again fight for the United States and the world and stopping the threat of the Nazis and Adolf Hitler. He was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. The interesting thing was, in that movie To Hell and Back, which I highly recommend you watch if you're a martial artist and a warrior, all right? If you want to see what a real warrior is, okay? He stars in the movie himself. He went on to become this big Hollywood star. Starred in all kinds of movies, westerns, a lot of westerns, and here's a guy who actually did it for real, right? So he's able to convey a certain way of doing things. So in seeing him, the thing to keep in mind is if you watch the movie To Hell and Back, they downplay what he did because they were afraid that people would think, well, he was just some kind of crazy killer, which he wasn't. He was a soldier, and he was fighting against a determined force that wanted to kill him. And he just decided he was not going to let that happen. So I look at someone like Audie Murphy, and I say to myself, well, did Audie Murphy study any martial arts? Why is he so deadly? I don't think he probably just studied, the hand-to-hand combat that they taught in World War II, which, by the way, a lot of that stuff's very good, very practical, simple, works, right? They taught him how to fire a gun, right, which he already had skill in, knew how to do, right? Hunting for his family to put food on the table, okay? Remember, different time. So I hear all the time talk of the deadliest art. Well, Wing Chun's the deadliest art. Well, Greco-Roman wrestling's the deadliest art. Well, this is the deadliest art. That's the deadliest art. Tai Chi Chuan is the deadliest art, okay? I've studied several arts. And one of the things I do when I study them is I look for the common threads that go through each art when it comes to combat principles. Again, I don't do sport martial arts, not interested, no interest in it, okay? So I look for those common threads that flow through all these combat arts, right? The things that are important to be successful in life and death situations, all right? So I would get asked at work, right? Many police officers saw me use my martial arts skills for real. Some of my students in New York actually were standing right next to me when I fought. They were cops that worked with me. So they got to see me, in real situations a lot. I would be asked by other cops after maybe one of them saw me do something. They'd say, well, Calandra, because cops always call each other by our last name. Calandra, when you fight, which art do you use? And I'd always laugh a little bit and say, I don't use any art, I fight. And they say, well, yeah, but you study all these arts. Do you use mainly karate? Or do you use mainly this or that? And I says, I don't think about it, I just fight. When I fight, there's no martial art. I'm not thinking, oh, today I'm going to use karate. No, someone's trying to harm me, seriously harm me. The outcome is going to be, if I lose, serious physical harm to me or death. That's what the outcome is going to be, okay? I have to prevent it. I'm not thinking, well, let me use this technique from karate today. Or you know what? I think today I'll do some jiu-jitsu. Or you know what? I'll try this move from Tai Chi. No. You train so that when you have to physically defend yourself, okay, your body should just move. These arts should become part of you, and you use them. All right. If you study multiple arts, well, someone might see you do something and say, boy, that was some jiu-jitsu technique you did. Okay, but I wasn't thinking I was going to do jiu-jitsu. That was the opening that was there, and I just reacted and did the move. So, again, important to not concern ourselves with how deadly a particular art is. If you train that art in a way where you become proficient in situations where someone's trying to cause you serious harm, then of course that art can become a deadly art. But on the same token, I could take that same art or have someone that trains in that same art, and they train in that art purely as a sport. Or in modern times, they train in that art where they're only interested in keeping their dojo doors open. So they want people to like the art. They want people to have a lot of fun with the art, right? They don't want it to be so serious. They want people to keep coming back, right? The idea, again, of any one particular art being deadly is just ridiculous beyond belief. There are only deadly people, and deadly people can teach you things. I remember I worked with police officers. Thank God, was never in a shooting. But I wanted to understand what's it like to be in a shooting. So I would ask cops that I worked with, what was it like? And it'd be interesting. You'd get a lot of different answers. And this is how you increase your area of knowledge, right? So again, you say to yourself, well, what does that have to do with martial arts? Well, it has to do with martial art big time, because I was a law enforcement officer for 22 years of my life, all right? I carried a firearm. I still carry a firearm every day, okay? So again, what if I'm in a mall? Now a guy starts shooting up the mall. Well, having those insights into gunfights from someone who is actually in a gunfight and getting multiple ideas from multiple people that were in gunfights increases my knowledge in terms of my effectiveness in certain situations. Okay? So, there's not a particular gun martial art, right? But when you study from different guys that have real experience and engaged in gunfights, okay, that adds to your understanding, all right? So in the same token, I would arrest a criminal, and when I would run his background, I'd see, oh, this guy did 15 years for armed robbery. This guy did, 7 years for this, 5 years for this. So when they were in a cell and I was doing the paperwork, I would ask them, have you ever seen anybody stabbed in prison? And, some of them were super angry. They wouldn't talk to me. But most of them, I'll be honest with you, most of them were not. They knew they were in jail. That was it. They were going to have to go and deal with the system. And they'd say, yeah, I seen a few guys get stabbed in prison. I said, can you tell me how it happened? Describe it to me. Show me how the guy came at him. Did he hide the knife? Did he show the knife? How did he hide the knife? How did he position his body? When he began to stab, how did he stab the guy he was attacking? I got a lot of info. That info contributed to my understanding of being able to defend myself in a life and death situation. Is there a prison martial art? I don't think so. I mean, prisoners have techniques they use on each other. That I can tell you for a fact. But is there a prison martial art? Would that martial art be the deadliest? I don't know. I don't think so, right? Again, it's not a question of the art being deadly. It's the question of your own personal individual search for proficiency and the ability to handle yourself in extremely high stress, extremely violent, dangerous situations. I saw police officers fold like a cheap suit when a criminal attacked them. I saw police officers who I thought, maybe would not be able to defend themselves. I saw those police officers rise to the occasion and take the criminal out. You know, the old saying is, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog, right? These are all important things to consider. When you begin to label an art as a deadly art, as the deadliest art, as one of the most deadliest arts, you're already setting yourself up for failure. All right, so now you're saying your art's deadly, and now one of your students is assaulted, and your student doesn't do so good. Okay, now whose fault is it? You've proclaimed your art's very deadly, but your art didn't work when it counted. Is your art that deadly? Maybe not, right? Again, it's not the art. It's the individual practicing the art. If you're training with an instructor, and he's a legitimate instructor, and he's honest with you, and he's never ever used his art in a high stress, high violent, life and death situation, I can totally respect that. If you're training with an instructor and he's told you, well, I've never used this in combat, but then he shows you a technique and says, I know this technique works. How? How do you know it works? Have you done it? Have you done it for real? Right? And again, I'm not saying you must seek out instructors that only have experience in combat. I'm not saying that at all. Okay? Because we do martial arts for a lot of different reasons. All right? But again, because of the line of work I chose, my martial arts had to become real. Had to become real. If they didn't, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. I'd be dead. I mean, every once in a while, I think about some of the situations I was in, and I say to myself, boy, that could have definitely gone bad. I could have easily been killed. All right? But luckily, the way I trained, the things I came to understand, I came through. All right? If I teach a certain technique, I may say, well, this technique I actually used a lot in real fighting. But I almost always add, but keep in mind, it worked for me. It worked for me. It doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Okay? So again, you want to train, you want to develop the techniques, and you want to bring them into the situation where your life's on the line, and you want it to work. Okay? Be leery of any instructor that's claiming his art's the deadliest art, or he's the deadliest individual. Well, I do Krav Maga, and Krav Maga, we took out all the nonsense techniques, and we only teach the deadliest techniques. We only teach the techniques that are most effective. My eyes start to glaze over. Okay, please. All right, stop. All right. If you train in an art, and you train in that art and work that art where that art becomes part of you. If you're someone who has, for whatever reason, had to defend yourself in several situations, and that art worked, and that art came through for you, well, I'd say great. And I'd say you're a pretty, I don't like to use the term deadly, but you're a pretty good practitioner of that art. You're able to actually take that art that you were taught and use it in a life and death combat situation. But you could have 5 other people in the dojo that don't do that with that art. They're incapable of doing that. Okay? Same thing. Audie Murphy, most decorated soldier in World War II. He goes through the same training as everybody else. Why is he able to rise to a level that most other men aren't? Right? They all receive the same training, but for whatever reason, he's able to internalize that training. He's able to absorb that training, and now he's able to actually bring that training and use it and become a very dangerous man. A very dangerous man. How many people did he save by killing a lot of people that were trying to kill his friends, trying to kill his fellow soldiers? So they all received the same training. Why was he? Because some people are able to transcend that. That's why I say there's no deadly art. There's deadly and dangerous people. Okay? I train my children to be dangerous people, but also instill morals in them. You train a dog to only attack and, not to respect your commands. You create training an animal that's not good. You are constantly talking about, to your students, well, this will kill the guy. You want to hit him here so it kills him. And you're not explaining to them, well, within the eyes of the law, if you did this technique in this situation, you'll probably go to jail. So you need to understand when and how you're going to do these techniques. So along with looking to become dangerous and deadly, there has to be a strong moral core. There has to be the how, the why, and when we do certain techniques and when we don't do those certain techniques. All right? So don't worry about your art being deadly. Worry about you training yourself so you can transmit your art and bring it and use it in a life and death situation where it works. That's what we're striving for. If you're training in martial arts, where you want to be proficient in life protection, not sport. So, take the name, the deadliest martial art, throw it out the window. All right? Only people can be dangerous and deadly. All right? It's what you can take out of these arts. They're all good. All right? Hope you've enjoyed this one. Please, again, click that like button. That like button is very important. Subscribe if you haven't. We're closing in on 12,000 subscribers. Think about becoming a member, $2.99 a month. I'm doing a lot of self-defense stuff and teaching all the different arts, instructional videos. The member videos have no commercials, okay? So that's another plus. Hope you enjoyed this one, and take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.